There's a couple of factors with an autoimmune condition. It's typically thought that you need to have a leaky gut or intestinal permeability for you to have an autoimmune condition. And that's really simplistically where the lining of your gut is damaged. There's bigger holes in it than really there should be.
Welcome to the Optimum Human Podcast, the show that interviews the world's top experts in fitness, nutrition, mindset, and beyond. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Optimum Human Podcast. My name is Brian McKay, he's Claude Petroulis, and we are the hosts of the Optimum Human Podcast. Today we've got another amazing guest who actually specializes in gut digestive disorders, problems such as Crohn's, Colitis, IBD, IBS, and the like. So, Mr. Greg Williams, how the hell are you today, sir?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on. And Claude, sir?
I'm great. I had my coffee, though I think I might have to get off of it soon. I think it's taking its toll on my adrenals, but you gotta know your body, what it wants and what it doesn't want. But other than that, I'm great. You doing good, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic. I wanted to interrupt this program for a quick announcement. So today's...
You're pregnant.
I am. So today's podcast is brought to you by the quote, "Time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time."
Oh, all right.
Yes,
I like it.
We're getting deep.
Yeah. I feel like with Plato or Socrates right now.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, Mr. Greg Williams, so glad to have you on the show today.
We're sorry. It's
all good.
I'm not. You knew what you were getting into. So can you kind of give us a quick rundown of what you do and kind of how you got here?
Yeah, sure. So I mainly specialize, like you said, in helping people with Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and other digestive health issues to rebuild their health, basically, and getting them to a place where they're happier, more energetic, as symptom-free as possible. And by using natural means and aiming to get to the root of their problems, understanding why they exist and building their health that way, as opposed to just relying on medication and surgery, which is typically what someone who suffers with inflammatory bowel disease is going to be given from their doctor. So that's essentially what I do, and I got into this area, into this niche through my wife. Really, I was a nutritionist, and I was working with people for fat loss and muscle gain. Mainly people in the gym and stuff like that. And I met my wife, and she suffered with ulcerative colitis, which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease. And she was in a pretty bad way. She'd suffered for many years. She was on the toilet generally 15, 20 times a day, urgent, frequent bowel movements. She was in a lot of pain, losing blood, very, very fatigued. So, even the smallest task would leave her very low on energy. And, there were ups and downs, and really all the doctors were doing were prescribing her medication, stronger and stronger drugs over time. And she was on immuno-suppressants for a long time, which obviously suppressed her immune system. And that didn't particularly help her symptoms anyway.
Gee, imagine that.
yeah, and it left her exposed to other problems, obviously. And one day she woke up, she had a very bad rash on her back, which when we went to the doctors, it turned out she had shingles. It was a very, very bad case of shingles, and the doctor told her essentially that's because she was on the immunosuppressants, and she would really be left exposed to that kind of thing for the rest of her life, ultimately, because she needed that medication. And that was really kind of the turning point for her. I'd already been trying to tell her, change your diet and do this and do that. And, she listened to some of what I said, but because the doctors had told her that really there wasn't anything that could be done about her symptoms, she had kind of gone along with that thought process. But the shingles, because it was so bad, and because the thought of having this for the rest of her life really was so awful, that kick-started the process for us to turn things around. And so we started the long journey to doing that. And so we made some diet changes initially, and that brought about some good results, but on its own it wasn't everything. There were ups and downs along the way, and it sort of kick-started me into a lot of training, a lot of courses, speaking to a lot of people about how really we could get to the root of our problems. And yeah, to cut a long story short, we've got her now to a place where she's symptom and medication free, more energy than ever, no pain, bowel movements completely under control, because we stopped trying to mask things really with drugs and looked to get what was causing her problems instead.
Beautiful. Now, the thing that I got out of that whole story was the fact that the doctors are disempowering people by telling them that there's nothing that can be done. It's so common, and it's come up a couple times recently on the show, and it's so, we have to be careful as healthcare professionals ourselves, or medical professionals, dealing in the medical community, with what we tell our clients and patients, and is it empowering or disempowering them?
Yeah, completely. It's they're really putting a label on your set of symptoms. You've got Crohn's, you've got ulcerative colitis, and it's almost, even just that label of that disease is disempowering, I feel, because it's not like, well, you've got these things that have caused this set of symptoms. It's, oh, you've got Crohn's, you've got ulcerative colitis, therefore you just need medication. So it is very disempowering, and it does just leave people almost hopeless to some extent. Only this week, actually, I spoke with a client who came to me a few months ago, and he was in a really bad way like a few months ago, and is significantly better. He's chosen not to use any medication. And he's significantly better. He told the doctor what we'd been doing together, and the doctor described it as hocus pocus, and that he must have just got better. His body would have naturally got better anyway. I mean, obviously not every doctor is that close-minded, but a lot of them are, and it's demoralizing for some people,
Of course. Now, I was wondering, what were some major steps that you took to help her out with the condition? I mean, it really sounds like you managed to reverse everything. So, what were some big contributors to it?
Yeah, so there's diet plays a big part, as you might expect. It's a digestive health issue, and diet, what we put into our bodies, is a huge factor. So certainly removing some of the commonly problematic foods, so foods that she was going to be reacting to, things like gluten, wheat, dairy, soy, are certainly things that I would want most people who suffer with inflammatory bowel disease to take out initially, at least, because they're so commonly problematic. Diet, and then there is always other things to be doing, further changes to be making. Those ones that I just mentioned are probably the most commonly problematic, but then you can get into things like, eggs and nuts can be a problem. Then you can look at the nightshade family of foods, the tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, chilies.
Do you test for those, or do you just remove them and then introduce them in and see what happens?
We certainly don't test towards the start of someone's journey. So when someone's in a bad way, I don't see any point in testing. You
get rid of the usual suspects.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the best tester there is at the end of the day. Food sensitivity testing is notoriously inaccurate. There's not many tests that I would do, and the thing is as well that like I say, removing foods and then reintroducing at a later date in a structured way is the best way to work out if someone is going to react to a food or not, or is sensitive to that food. But then also, we can maybe get a bit more into this, but when someone has what I call a leaky gut or intestinal permeability, where their gut is damaged, the lining of their gut is damaged, they're going to be sensitive to more foods than once their gut is healed. Food sensitivities largely exist for a reason. It's not just, you're not just born with hundreds of food sensitivities. So the foods that my wife Donna was sensitive to when she was in a really bad way, she's not as sensitive to as many of those foods right now. So if we ran a food sensitivity test, for example, like a blood test, it does depend at what point in time that you run it that is going to show what food she's sensitive to, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah,
totally,
absolutely.
totally.
Cool.
No,
I had actually never really considered the timing and when the last time you had the food in relation to when the test is.
Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily that timing as such. I mean more in terms of, if I typically work with someone for 6 months, for example. If we run a food sensitivity test in the first month, we would likely find that they're reacting to a huge number of foods, and we'd have just been better just to remove the commonly problematic ones at first, and then with trial and error see how they got on. Now, once we've gone through all the protocols, addressed other underlying issues, built the health of their gut and so on, towards say 4 or 5 months in, if we rerun that food sensitivity test, then they're going to be sensitive. They're going to show us reactive to far fewer foods than if we had at the start, and that's when it's more valuable towards the end of someone's journey rather than towards the start.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Fine tuning, with all the little things. Now,
So-
did you use any supplements?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's a range of things that we might use. Typical ones, probably most common things like
Hey, Greg,
I think
you're cutting up there.
certainly.
We cut out a little bit there, Greg.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
we can hear you now.
We got you now. Sorry, you were just getting on
Okay.
about the supplements.
Yeah, so there's a wide range of supplements that might be effective for someone. So vitamin D would be a vitamin D deficiency is certainly something to be avoiding. It's associated with flares of Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and all autoimmune conditions in reality.
Now, where are you located again?
In the UK,
Okay, in England.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You guys get lots of sunlight over there, right?
No, exactly, and it's almost just not possible to get enough vitamin D from the sun. So supplementation is typically needed. Now that's I mean that probably applies to most people really.
A lot of the world. I know myself and Claude live in a pretty cloudy climate, so.
But not to mention that, imagine how much time we spend inside as compared to what our ancestors spent inside, right?
Yeah,
So,
completely.
yeah.
Completely, yeah, and it's
So-
just our lifestyles these days, and you can get some vitamin D from food, but just generally not enough.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is when we do go out in the sun, we're told to cover ourselves in sunscreen,
Right.
and that affects the absorption of the vitamin D as well. So
Yeah, we get like 30 cool chemicals into our system. Awesome.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
All right. So we got the vitamin D.
Yeah, then it does get very personalized, and we do well. I do some testing with my clients that helps us to look deeper inside their bodies. So we run things like stool tests, urine tests, and so on. And the outcome of those can depend on what supplements we recommend. As a few examples.
And what are you generally looking for in, say, the stool test or the urine test?
So a stool test would show us, it shows us someone's bacteria levels in their gut. So our guts are home to lots of different types of bacteria. Really important for our overall health. They almost define who we are. They control our immune system, our metabolism, our thoughts, our feelings, our digestive health. And so a stool test can show us our good bacteria levels different strains of bacteria, how much of them we have. It can show us whether there's any bad bacteria, like a bacterial infection, for example. And if there is, then we can put in place protocols to help to kill that off. And that would be certain supplements typically would be used to kill that off. So things like grapefruit seed extract, berberine, caprylic acid, those would be used to help to target something like that.
Okay.
Similarly, if we found that good bacteria levels were very low for whatever reason, that could be antibiotic use in the past, it could be a history of poor diet, toxin exposure, stress, low fiber intake, a huge number of things, then we would probably use a probiotic supplement to help increase those levels, as well as fermented foods, so things like sauerkraut, kefir, kombucha can all be used to help bump up our good bacteria levels in our gut as well, which is really important. Also on the testing, we similar to like a bacterial infection, we could find a parasitic infection, which is like a bug. It's essentially a bug living inside you, dependent on you for its survival. And if you have that going on, then a stool test can identify that, and really you absolutely must be killing that off if you want to feel as good as you possibly can. Now, some people can not show symptoms and have a parasite, but certainly when you have something like Crohn's or colitis or an autoimmune condition or digestive health issues, and if we found that you did have a parasite, then that's almost the first step to do to kill that off, because it can be causing a world of problems.
That's interesting because I've done a stool test before, and I've been found to have H. pylori. And okay. The practitioner I was working with said that the overgrowth of the H. pylori may have to do a lot with my issues. And I'm not sure if that, like, I did a lot of reading, and apparently it's like 80% of the world's population has H. pylori. So what's your take on that, Greg?
Yeah, and that H. pylori is a tough one, really, because so many people do have it at the end of the day, and so you can test for it, and you might find that you have it, but I would say you can never really say, yeah, this is certainly causing my symptoms. Now, you can always put in place a protocol to try and kill it off if you know you've got it, if you've explored other avenues, if you've got health issues and the other avenues haven't really led you anywhere, then I think it's worth certainly putting in place a protocol to try and kill that off and seeing if it has any beneficial effects for you. Now, you might find that either there's no benefit or you're unsuccessful in killing it off, in which case I would assume that for you to have it is relatively normal and not a problem, and I would continue to look elsewhere. But for some people, addressing it can be very beneficial indeed. So, yeah,
for sure, and I do know it has a lot to do with ulcers and a lot of other fun stuff. But I find just cleaning up like the diet and doing the right things for your body, like you were talking about, tends to get rid of like 90% of major symptoms. So I think just kind of living those basics and just treating your body nicely. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you do find that you have picked up a bad bacteria or parasite, then, I mean, to be fair, everyone can pick those things up, but you are more susceptible if the health of your gut isn't where it needs to be. And so if you have been eating a poor diet, or if you're stressed, or if you're exposing yourself to a lot of toxins or something like that, then you are going to be picking bugs and things up more commonly. So rarely can we just say that, you've got a bacterial infection or a parasitic infection, or one thing is the cause of someone's symptoms. It's a combination of numerous things, because it kind of goes full circle. If you have a bad diet, you're going to pick those things up more. If you've got those things going on, then you're going to be reacting to a lot more foods and so on. So it's all very much interrelated.
100%.
We could continue on the stool test if you like. Other things that a stool test would show you is how well you're digesting certain foods, so your proteins, fats, carbs, vegetables. It can indicate whether there's any digestion issues there. If you're not breaking down those foods well enough, then that can indicate like a lack of enzymes or simply not chewing your food well enough, and that can obviously lead to digestive issues, increased inflammation, and so on.
Yeah, being able to take the time to actually eat in a reasonable pace rather than, on the go like so many people do nowadays, it's far more important than people think, myself included.
So massively. Yeah,
wait,
it's so
Brian,
underappreciated.
Brian, are you saying I shouldn't be eating my McDonald's Big Mac in 2 bites?
No, nor while driving, while watching YouTube videos. I'm not judging. I'm just saying.
You're judging me?
I'm not judging.
I feel
you.
judgment coming from your part of the internet over there.
That's okay. You can project that onto me all you
All
want.
right.
I'm judging you.
All right. Well, at least one of you is open about it. So there's the stool tests, which I think are super important. They do tend to run a little bit. What companies do you usually recommend? Are there like worldwide companies, or are they UK specific for you? Or because I know there's a lot of shifty kind of people saying they'll test you for this, but meanwhile you can send in two samples from the same person under different names, and you might get 2 different results.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should be shipping feces internationally.
I don't think there's anything wrong, Brian. I will ship you some tomorrow, and
I don't
you tell me.
Claude. Oh man, this is what happens when you hook up with a shitty partner.
Oh, I think we're just at a shitty part of the podcast right now.
Yes.
Get it? Because we're talking about poop. Anyway, sorry, Greg. So companies that you generally
you can feel free to leave this conversation at any time. I wouldn't hold it against you.
Big red hang up button on the Skype. Just anytime you need to bail.
Yeah, I'm losing reception, guys.
Yeah.
I typically use doctor's data for my stool test, which I know is also a US company. So they're my favourite generally for a stool test. Genova is sometimes typically used by other practitioners, but I've found personally that I prefer the doctor's data stool test. And it's a stool test that's done over 3 days as well. If you just do a stool sample on one day and just provide one sample, then the likelihood of finding everything that we're looking for is vastly reduced. And so really when you do a stool test, making sure that you do one that's taking samples over at least 3 days is going to be much more effective.
Very interesting.
That's a great idea. I mean, the ones that I've been exposed to and familiar with, it's just you kind of do it once and then you're good to go. But definitely, are those all to be done at the same time of day, or do you do one in the morning and then the next one at lunch, or like how do you like? Because I know especially with people with like IBD and they go throughout the day. Do you generally try to time it? Because I know there's certain bacteria more lively in certain times of the day than others.
No, we don't really get into the time of the day as such. It's just when someone's
multiple samples.
Yeah, and they can do. You can actually into the tube on one day if you're going multiple times. You can, put in a mixture if you like. But no, I generally don't instruct people to do it at a particular time of day or anything like that.
No laxatives to blast one out at 7 a.m.
No, it's generally not needed.
If somebody has not done this test, they if they just want to do it out of curiosity, it is kind of like one of the I don't know if it's unsettling, but it's like one of the most surreal, weird experiences you'll ever have. Like, there's this little spoon inside this little test tube, and then you
all right, and we're losing all of our listeners right now.
You poop into a bag and you scoop it with a little spoon and put it in the test tube. It's amazing.
It's really horrible. It is horrible.
Yeah, it's such a shitty experience.
Oh, so anyways,
the one thing I should say is that some people might be listening to this and thinking that they've done a stool test because they've done one through their doctor, but the the quality and effectiveness of those tests that you might have done for your doctor is vastly different to what you might do for a practitioner like myself. Firstly, the labs that they go to, the things that they're checking for are very different. Generally, a doctor's one is only going to be one day, like I just mentioned, but a doctor is normally only looking for inflammation, which is more of a symptom than an underlying cause, or they're looking for very, very specific parasites, but it's not a very wide range. They're not looking at your bacterial levels, they're not looking at digestive function, they're not looking for yeast. So please, if you have done a stool test with your doctor, don't confuse it with what we're talking about.
Yeah, this one, there's so many different options.
A little bit more in depth than your primary care is going to give you.
Yeah,
definitely. There's like so many little check mark boxes that you can click and different tests, and yeah, it's amazing. You can literally test yourself for almost anything. It's like check out like Genova or Doctor's Data, and you just see the types of tests they have, and you'll be like, holy crap, this is to me, it's like being a kid in a candy store, but I've got different hobbies than most people, so I guess.
Sounds like it.
No, I'm fascinated.
You can be fascinated, and you can get carried away with it to some extent as well. But it's always worth remembering that regardless what a test shows, it's most important with how you feel, you know. And so if someone is feeling great, but just wants to geek out on a test, I'm almost hesitant to do it to some extent, because if you did find that you had something going on, you like a bacteria that maybe shouldn't be there, then it can screw with your mind a little bit and make you feel worse than you otherwise would. And
you all of a sudden start getting symptoms, and you're like, the power of suggestion, and
So I typically don't run tests very often at all on myself, for example, because I feel good. But I do have an urge to geek out sometimes.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
And we were talking about macronutrients a little bit earlier, and Brian, I believe you had a question about that.
Yeah, I was kind of curious as to, like, when working with a client, it is, I mean, obviously you've already kind of said you focus on removing foods first, but is macronutrient ratios something that you kind of put any focus or attention on when working with a client, or?
Yeah, it can be. It's generally not something that I ask a client to think about, but it's certainly something I'm considering when I look at like a food diary or something like that. Typically, as you'll know, people will come to you and their diet is normally too high in carbs and too low in proteins and fats, and making that adjustment is certainly important, including some protein, preferably with every meal. I think is important for the healing process, for controlling energy levels, and then also getting some.
So Cheerios with factory farmed milk is not the best breakfast?
It's not the best start to the day, no.
My whole childhood has just been ruined.
It's one big lie, Brian.
Right.
One big lie. I remember there was a good tip. I don't remember who said it, but they said if there's a commercial for it on TV, generally it's not that healthy for you.
Yeah.
So, you don't see many commercials for lettuce and grass-fed beef. So.
Yeah. Even if someone's got a list of ingredients, then normally that means that it's not going to be very good for you.
Food is ingredients.
Yeah. Going back to the macronutrient point, good fats as well. Good fats are like important for your overall health, your hormones, for your energy levels, everything. But especially, I would say, in the people I work with digestive health issues, I believe that typically they do respond better to a lower carb, higher fat diet, and that can be for a couple of reasons. One is because of the potential underlying bacterial issues, which can feed off of carbs. Then essentially you do want to starve those to some extent and bringing in more fats to replace the carbs that you've reduced is important. And similarly, we find people with like a yeast or candida overgrowth very commonly, and yeast and candida absolutely thrives on carbs and sugars, and so again, reducing that in your diet can be beneficial to help prevent that overgrowth.
Yeah, and I know that's a pretty common one, the candida, especially nowadays. Everything pretty much looks like it has sugar in it. What other things can affect somebody with candida or a yeast overgrowth?
The thing with candida or yeast is that it's again not the problem in itself. So it hasn't overgrown just because it felt like it. And certainly diet can be a huge factor in that. So like I said, if someone is on a very high carb, high sugar diet, then that can lead to an overgrowth. If someone has very low levels of good bacteria, perhaps from a history of antibiotic use or low fiber intake or all the other things that we spoke about, then that can leave you much more exposed to a candida or yeast overgrowth. Stress can, toxin exposure can. All of those things can leave you susceptible to it, and then also bacterial infections and parasitic infections. If they're leaving your gut health in a bad place, then candida is opportunistic really, and it will overgrow because it can. Everyone does have some. It's needed. It's needed for your digestion and absorption. But it's when conditions in the gut aren't as good as they could be that it starts to overgrow, and bring it back under control is really important. It's not always easy, but it is really important for your symptoms.
Definitely, and it seems like there is a bit of a pattern here with stress and antibiotics and overall gut health. So I think if our listeners are taking away one thing from here is your lifestyle matters. So, yeah, speak to Brian, Greg, or myself, and we'll get you fixed up. All right, enough shameless pimping. Brian, I tend to always rant, and I know you like to have your questions too. I don't want to, have you send me anthrax or whatever that was in the mail the other day. So.
Why aren't you coughing right now, Claude? You should be coughing. Did you not open my pack?
No, the thing is, I did, but I think you got like the discount brand, or maybe it was just like laundry detergent or something.
Discount anthrax.
So you got to try harder next time, man.
Damn it.
Maybe your gut health's just so good you just don't react.
That could be.
Maybe.
Just to be clear, everyone, we're kidding. I'm not actually.
We're not sending anthrax across borders.
God, I'm just waiting for the government to, start knocking on my door. Right. Oh God. So, anyways,
well, if I'm running solo next week, you know what happened.
Right.
Ryan's in a CIA black site with a hood over his head, being waterboarded.
Hey, it could happen.
In your America, definitely.
Absolutely. So, Greg, I know a lot of the digestive problems are, a big part of your focus, but I was kind of curious, for our listeners, what is kind of the definition of an autoimmune disease, and what's kind of the underlying cause?
Really, an autoimmune condition is where your immune system is attacking itself ultimately, and that really leads to a number of symptoms. Now, in someone with inflammatory bowel disease, the immune system is attacking your bowel or somewhere else in the digestive tract, and that causes the inflammation. In someone with rheumatoid arthritis, it's attacking the cells in your joints. In someone with Hashimoto's, it's attacking the thyroid, and so on and so on. So they're all autoimmune conditions. They all have very different symptoms. They all have different labels, but the underlying causes can be all of the things that we've talked about. It's whatever is causing your immune system to behave like it is. And suppose someone, for example, is highly sensitive to gluten, for example, and they've got a lot of gluten in their diet. Over time, that can lead to an immune system attacking your thyroid, or it could lead to an immune system attacking your digestive tract. And while someone with Hashimoto's and inflammatory bowel disease have two completely different labels for their illness, the underlying cause can essentially be the same.
Is there any I don't want to say is there any test, but is there any reason that science or researchers or anybody has figured out as to why, we'll say, one thing's attacking the bowels and one thing's attacking the thyroid?
There's a couple of factors. With an autoimmune condition, it's typically thought that you need to have a leaky gut or intestinal permeability for you to have an autoimmune condition. And that's really simplistically where the lining of your gut is damaged. There's bigger holes in it than really there should be, which allows undigested food particles, toxins, and so on to make their way into the bloodstream, which your immune system sees as an invader, and that causes a reaction. Now, numerous things can lead to a leaky gut and intestinal permeability. In terms of whether it means that your thyroid is the problem or the bowel and so on, then genetics do play a part. You do need to be genetically susceptible to have an autoimmune condition. But at the same time, just because you have the genes doesn't mean that you're just confined to a lifetime of illness, because it's really the field of epigenetics it talks about how your genes interact with the environment, and they need to be switched on almost by the environment for the disease to become active. Did I answer that? I don't know if I waffled a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think the genetics and the epigenetics absolutely play a huge role. And speaking of which, what is it that you're kind of how do I say this? What are you currently geeking out on? What are you studying at the moment that you're just really excited about learning more about?
A range of things, really. I guess I think the bacteria within our gut is, I don't think we're anywhere close to fully understanding and appreciating how it operates and how we can better influence it and how it influences our symptoms and so on. We do know an awful lot. But I don't think we even really sort of anywhere near fully understanding it. And by that I mean in terms of how we can use probiotics more effectively and use specific strains of bacteria more effectively to help someone's symptoms, or how we can test someone's gut bacteria levels. So like I said, we can run a stool test, for example, that shows someone's gut bacteria levels. It shows the types of bacteria that we find and whether we feel that they're typically lower than what we might expect. But at the same time, we know that everyone is very individual, and so you might have much lower levels of lactobacillus than me, for example, but that might be right for you. It might be the appropriate level for you, and if we had you supplementing with lactobacillus, then that could actually cause you problems, whereas for me it might be beneficial. And so I feel that's something that sort of I'm looking into a little bit more lately, and something that I'm trying to understand better, and I think everyone's trying to understand better in terms of how we can get much more personalized with our bacterial and probiotic recommendations and understanding and so on.
Absolutely. I'm reminded, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but I seem to remember that the standard medical, the way to find standard medical, like what's okay and what's out of range is you take the 100% of samples, you lop the bottom 10% and the top 10% off, and that's your average healthy range. And
yeah, and typically that it's not even a healthy range. Typically, those samples have been derived from people who ran the test who are probably ill in the first place,
right?
And so you're taking a typical range of ill people. Can be a problem with some of the reference ranges on some of the tests,
Yeah, I always try to remind people that normal doesn't necessarily mean healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a big one.
Now, what is something that you disagree with most other professionals in your field that they generally agree on?
Wow. Good question. You've put me on the spot there.
We can come back if you'd like.
I think one thing that springs to mind is the point around food sensitivities. I think a lot of nutritionists certainly would leave people on quite restricted diets almost forever. That they think, oh, you just need to take out gluten, dairy, soy. You need to take out the nightshades and nuts and eggs and things like that, without a view to trying to understand why someone might be sensitive to those in the first place. And so I'm not as huge on removing loads and loads of foods as someone else might be.
I think we lost Greg again a little bit.
We lost Greg. Still there, Greg?
Sorry.
Hello?
The internet geese are angry today.
Yes. Too many clouds, not enough vitamin D.
That's right.
Hello?
All right, there we are.
There we go.
Whoop.
Welcome back, Greg.
Okay, we're back.
Chopping in and out.
Oh, man.
All right, there we go, I think.
You got me?
Yep, we got you.
Sorry, I don't know what's happening. So yeah, I'm not as big as some people and just remove all of these foods and certainly make someone leave them out for a long time. Or more, we'll remove the commonly problematic ones, the ones that we know can really be a problem, like gluten and wheat. Like there's very little benefit to that, and it is a big problem. And then look deeper and look for the infections, rebuild the gut, heal the intestinal permeability. I feel I'm probably a little bit different to a lot of practitioners in that regard.
Okay, perfect. It reminds me of the meme I've seen online. It's basically the words is, here's your gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, dinner, and it's a plate of ice.
That's vegan, non-GMO.
Yeah, exactly.
The one other thing as well, I think a lot of practitioners like to use probiotics from the start. They'll just put someone on a course of probiotics, sometimes without even doing any testing, because it can give some good results. If it certainly can help to improve someone's symptoms, but I don't think that's really a long-term view. I prefer to remove some of the foods, do some testing, remove the bacterial infections and so on first before bringing the probiotics in. I just think it can skew some of the other stuff that we're doing if we see immediate good results from that. But long term, if you've still got the underlying infections, if you're still eating a load of rubbish, probiotics can only do the job for so long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard to band-aid a lot of these conditions.
I'm reminded of the fact that supplements are there to help us better digest and assimilate food, but if we're taking supplements and continuing to eat crap, we're just better digesting and assimilating crap. Exactly,
and that's probiotics. If you took them, like you said, it band-aid, that's exactly what it would be if you're still doing all the other stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't realize it, and you can't out supplement a bad diet and bad lifestyle, and it turns into very expensive urine at the end of the day. So everyone, make sure your lifestyle's in check, because if not, you're wasting money on like, I know people, like, personally, that spend at least $500 a month on supplements, and
that is insane.
Yeah, and
I know people too, but that is insane.
Yeah, and their health isn't getting better. And I'm looking at what they're doing during the day, and I'm just like, oh, you're drinking too much coffee, you're pulling your hair out because of your job, you're doing this, you're doing that. And you think, all these electrolytes and whatever L-glutamine will help you, but it's not like we were talking about. It's just a Band-Aid solution. It might keep you together, but if you got a giant open wound, putting a Band-Aid on that, generally no healthcare professional will think that's a good idea. So, and I think that a lot of the times, sometimes we try to do that with medications too. We don't know what the hell is causing the symptoms, so we just start throwing drugs at it. And that's why it's important to research your own health. Like, don't just go to one person. They're like, oh, you're fucked, take this, and then you take it, you're not getting better, and you have to suffer, which is what we started the podcast with. You don't necessarily need to suffer. You just need to really
unless you're listening to this podcast, then you must.
Yeah. If you choose to listen to this podcast, and you're probably into some kinky shit to begin with, and you like pain.
Jesus.
So that's different.
Wow. All right, and on that note, Craig, we want to be respectful of your time. Claude, do you have any other questions for Greg before we move into the wrap up?
You know what? No, my mind is just filled with leather and whips and all sorts of crazy shit now. Other than that, I just.
Claude, do you have an iron deficiency?
I've got a mental deficiency.
Yeah.
Greg, so if somebody is suffering with ailments like constant bowel syndromes or bloody stools, what would their first step be? Like what do they do? Do they Google on WebMD and then they're like, oh, I have bowel cancer, and then just give up? Or like what would a normal person do? Like, what resources would you recommend that they go to, or do you recommend they go to a coach right away, or a doctor, or?
If someone has certainly has bloody stools or very bad bowel movements, then I would recommend the doctor is the starting point, in all honesty, because it's not just they can do tests for bowel cancer, like you said, or it could be IBD, or it could be IBS, or it could be something else, and understanding what it is important. Now, in some regards, they are just gonna put a label on things like it is IBD or it is IBS, which is almost just a cop-out diagnosis, if you like, in terms of we just don't know what else it is, so we'll call it IBS. But if it's bowel cancer, then obviously you want to know about that. It's so yeah, I would say the doctor is the starting point. Now, if it does turn out to be IBD, IBS, or I would, rather than just be thinking about it, oh, I've got a label for my problems now, and now I understand what the problem is. You don't really truly understand what the problem is, because you don't know what's causing it yet, and so don't just almost be happy at the diagnosis and the label, for want of a better word, but you then need to be looking deeper and understand what it is, and the doctor might be giving you the medication. And that might be needed at that time. You might be in such a bad way that the medication to get things under control is necessary. I'm not saying it's never necessary.
Yeah, so let's get the bleeding to stop before we go fixing things holistically.
Exactly.
Let's use some common sense.
Definitely.
Yeah, and people, some people have lost so much weight or so much blood, and in such a bad way that they need to get things under control very quickly. But it is a short-term solution, and if you want to feel as good as you want to long-term, then you need to be thinking about getting to the root of the problem, and like you say, building it holistically as well.
Right on. So is there any resources somebody with Crohn's or IBD you'd direct them to, or like any websites, podcasts? You could even mention your own website too. I know you've got some resources on there.
Yeah, so my website is iamgregwilliams.com, the self-indulgently titled.
I need one of those websites.
There's a UK site, ibdrelief.com, which is quite a good resource for people with Crohn's and colitis, understanding, what their issues are and so on. It doesn't necessarily go into as much about the holistic side of things, but it can be a good resource and a lot of good information. I'm personally a big fan of Chris Kresser.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think his the information that he puts up on his site, it might be a bit too geeky for some people listening to this, but it provides very good information. So I think his site is excellent.
Yeah, it's very clinical, but he's very thorough, super smart guy.
Yeah. So I think they're the main ones, good starting points for someone. Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And
I think with that we can move to Brian's wrap-ups.
All right. So if you had to rescue 3 books, resources, videos, courses, classes, etc. from a fire, what would they be?
Okay, so for books, I don't read a huge amount, but some books that I like. I particularly liked Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography. I found it quite inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
I love his story. I think he's a great example of someone just deciding what they want and going out and getting it without being realistic or without worrying about what other people might think, or and just reading his story was really good for me. The fact that he can barely speak English very well, the fact that he can't act, but he decided he wanted to be a top Hollywood actor. He literally decided that, and he went out and got it. And with becoming the mayor of California and all of that stuff, I found it was really good. Another one, Psycho-Cybernetics, I think is a really good book.
Maxwell Maltz.
Yeah. Just around the mindset side of things, how you see yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you perceive yourself. I think that's really, really important book. I recommend it to all my clients, actually. The mindset side of things, when you do get labelled with a disease and when you are battling illness, the mindset side of things is almost the most important. If you're telling yourself that you can't get over your problems, and if you're defining yourself by your disease and all these things, then no matter what you do on the diet and so on, you're almost always ultimately going to be experiencing symptoms. So getting the mindset side of things is really important. Another book that I recently read is The Chimp Paradox, which I really like.
Is it about Brian?
Sorry?
Is it about Brian here?
Yes, it is. It's my autobiography, Claude.
Oh shit! It's about time you put one of those out.
It's really about our brains and our personalities, and how that we have like a human side of our brain and the chimp side of the brain, and really controlling the chimp is really important for our health, for our success, for everything in life, and understanding how that chimp acts and what his needs are and everything like that. I found it really good book. It spoke a lot of sense, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Beautiful. Now, what purchase under we'll say 75 pounds has benefited you or your practice the most?
Wow. I personally use a Jawbone, but you might know it as a Fitbit, which just purely for tracking how many steps I do every day and how active I am. Now, I am fairly active, but I do work from home, and having a set number of steps to target every day forces me to get up and go out of the house and go for a walk. And remain relatively active, because if you are too sedentary, then that is a massive problem for your health. And it also sort of gives you a little buzz when you've been sitting down for like 30 minutes and not moving. It just helps you to stand up and move about a bit and have a little bit of a stretch. So that's good for your health, but it's also good for helping to prevent injuries and so on. As I'm sure you know, being hunched over a desk all day is just no good for anything. So yeah, I found that good.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
All right, and drum roll, please.
That was a bad drum roll.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's all right. So, Greg, who is the first person that comes to mind, or what is your definition of the optimum human?
I don't think anyone necessarily springs to mind. I guess that's maybe a lie. I think people, like I touched on, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Will Smith, I see as quite inspiring people, just in terms of their mindset and their success, and really just going after whatever they want. I think that's a good trait certainly to have. But in terms of the optimum human, I don't know if it's necessarily about any sort of performance or health related issue, but more just someone that lives in line with their values, goes for what they want, doesn't really care or give a monkeys, if you like, about what anyone else
you can
thinks
say
of
it. People that just don't give a fuck what other people think.
I thought he was going to say bloody hell.
I couldn't remember if we were allowed to swear, so
a little bit, as long as it's not every other word, which I think you succeeded with quite well. So.
Okay, good. But yeah, just they live in line with their values. They're not worried about what others think of them. They do what they want when they want. They're good people, they care for others, they're kind and so on. But they're not living their life through what they think they should be doing. They're living their lives through what they want to be doing.
Beautiful.
It's easier said than done. I mean,
it is. But if we want it, we can make it happen.
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's just a lot of folks they're scared by that proposition, and that's a big thing. Just don't be scared. Just make it happen. What's the worst that can happen? We all die at the end, so hey, at least make it a good one.
That's
Exactly.
Claude's affirmations for the day. We all die at the end.
We all die at the end. So, right.
Of this podcast, potentially.
Oh yeah, especially if this powder starts kicking in.
Right. So Greg, who would you want to hear on this podcast, and what would you want to ask them or hear them talk about?
Wow. I would like. I've mentioned him already. Chris Kresser. I find him really interesting to listen to. I think he's got a huge amount of good information. Might be a little bit geeky for some, but I think listening to his interviews would be really good, and almost just his perspective on what an optimum human would be, and how someone, obviously I'm interested in the diet.
Oh, we
Just
lost
if
Greg.
helps on
Greg,
as someone.
we lost you there for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you again.
So you're just saying how you're interested in the diet?
Okay. Hello?
Yep.
Hello, Greg.
We're here.
Hello. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, not just I don't know how much you heard, but ultimately Chris Kresser's information, not just on digestive health, but more on just what would make someone the optimum human. How someone who feels well can improve their health even further. What else they can be doing? I'd be interested to hear that his views on that.
Definitely. I mean, he's a super smart guy, and he sounds like a surfer. The first time I heard him, I'm like, no way. Like, he just sounds like he's out surfing all day, but he's reading and creating programs for practitioners, and he's really gotten popular in the last few years. So it's fantastic.
I heard he reads while he surfs.
You know what? It's possible. I think he's if anyone can do it, it's Chris Kresser.
Oh, God, I talk way too much crap about celebrities, and I'm gonna end up with a lot of cease and desist one day.
Well, you know what? I'm waiting for our first one. I'm gonna frame it. Maybe from like McDonald's or Monsanto or something.
Right.
So, Craig, is there anything that you want to leave I think, was that all the wrap-ups? I don't want
we got
to go
a couple
prematurely
more.
here.
Yeah,
all right, Brian, you do it.
I'm sorry to hear that, Claude. So, Greg, how can our listeners find out more about you? Where can they find you?
If they head over to my podcast, not my podcast. I don't even have a podcast.
It sounds like you need one.
So my website, imgregwilliams.com, and if they go to /podcast, that's what I meant to say. They can put their email address in, and I'll send them over an ebook that talks about some of the steps that they can be taking to increase their energy levels. Typically, people with digestive health issues actually suffer badly with fatigue as well, and so this little ebook will give them some tips on turning things around there. So
beautiful.
That's the best place.
That's www.iamgregwilliams.com/podcast.
That's it. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll get that in the show notes. And any last thoughts, requests, knowledge bombs that you would like to leave with our listeners that made it through this?
No.
God damn it.
We have to leave that in. We have to leave that part in. Oh, Greg, I'm sorry. Your connection just made the best sound. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Man. Yeah, dude, your connection was like... We asked you, and it's like, no. The best sound ever. Holy shit. Oh, well, you know what? I think if most people didn't hang up when I was talking about scooping your poop with like a mini test tube shovel, then yeah, they. So sorry, Greg. We didn't catch the rest of that, but what we did catch is awesome. Any parting words at all?
I just think the mindset side of things is really important. If you've been labelled with any kind of disease or illness, then don't just accept that that's it and that's where things have to end. Always be asking, well, what's caused this and what can I do about it? Don't define yourself by your Crohn's or your colitis or your depression or your Hashimoto's or your arthritis or anything like that. Getting into a mindset where anything is possible, regardless of what other sufferers have told you, regardless of what your doctors told you, regardless of what anyone has told you, then a huge amount is possible if you believe it to be possible, and if you start asking about why you've got the problems in the first place, rather than just allowing yourself to be labelled. I think that's the most important thing for someone to remember.
Awesome. That's, as Brian likes to say, that's worth the price of admission alone.
Absolutely. Greg, sir, thank you so much for not only putting up with us, but also dropping some serious knowledge on us. I'd like to thank you again, sir, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been good. It's been a good time.
Yeah, Greg, thank you, man. And we will catch you later. And everyone, thank you for listening. You can find all, if not most of the stuff on the show notes. If there are show notes, we'll see. No, there will be. But thank you for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yep. Thanks so much, Greg.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Optimum Human Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to head on over to iTunes and give a 5-star rating and review, which will help spread the word to more awesome listeners just like you. Head on over to theoptimumhuman.com and subscribe to the free newsletter and get the Optimum Human's Blueprint to the Optimum Life. Download it instantly. Thanks for listening.